owned restaurants in the Twin Cities has never been easier. You'll find an expansive list of local dining options at eatlocalminnesota.com, from classic American comfort food to authentic flavors from around the world. Specializing in Szechuan and Peking cuisine, the Great Wall Chinese restaurant has been a local favorite since 1981. They offer one of the most extensive menus in the Twin Cities. Favorites include the sesame chicken, imperial beef, and Peking duck. The Great Wall restaurant is located off 45th and France, with takeout available too. More at greatwallrestaurant.us. Nightingale on 26th and Lyndale is the ultimate venue for unforgettable gatherings. Whether big or small, your event will be a hit with delicious food and drinks served in a warm and inviting atmosphere. Plus, Chef Carrie's special creations add that extra touch. Craft cocktails, curated drinks, and a diverse menu make Nightingale perfect for any celebration. More at nightingalempls.com.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for clear skies tonight with a low around 12, Thursday sunny with a high near 50, and Friday sunny with a high around 57. Discover perfection at Mavericks Real Roast Beef in Roseville. From Philly cheesesteak to crispy chicken, every bite is exceptional. Add freshly cut fries or rings for a winning combo. Visit mavericksbeef.com or find them off Lexington and Roseville. Unforgettable sandwiches. That's Mavericks Real Roast Beef.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. There are things people experience but never talk about. A shadow moving in the corner, flickering of the lights, a disembodied voice. We invite you to talk with us. Share your story, share your experience, because this isn't just your story. This is our story. This is Ghostbox Radio with Greg Bakken.
And this is Ghostbox Radio on AM 950, where every night we talk about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. My name is Greg Bakken. Very nice to be here tonight. Thank you all very much for joining me. Happy Wednesday. And also, I just wanted to start off by thanking everybody. Monday and Tuesday, we reran an episode. Actually, was one episode that we cut up into two. That was our tribute to our fallen friend, John Yost. His film that he made a number of years ago called Alien Abductions Answers. That's available on Amazon. Please take a look. And thank you all for sending some kind words our way, remembering John. Some of you had been friends with him, and he's just a very kind person. And him being gone has left a big hole in the community. And for those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, John Yost, he had a very early age had an abduction by what he believes were aliens, and he made this film from it. We had him on our program, and a special 2-hour program we did back in April of last year, and we just wanted to replay it again. We hadn't played it since, but we wanted to play it for kind of to keep the memory going of John. He had pancreatic cancer, and he succumbed to that on February 13th. So thank you all very much for listening and sending the notes and stuff. Really, really appreciate it. Now, as far as Minnesota, as far as what makes Minnesota, I think this week we saw it. And Monday we start, a 70-degree day. It was 70 up in my area, which is ridiculous. And then now we are at, what are we at now? Does it even? It's 12 degrees. It's 12 degrees out. And that was like not too far from the high today. So that was fantastic, of course. It's just like it's Minnesota. Now, some of you are going to be like, well, Greg, it's February. And I know it. I know what month it is. But, the thing is this is just classic Minnesota that takes us from the extremes. Minnesota is all about the extremes, isn't it? It's one day we're out there in shorts, and then the next day, well, I'm still out in shorts because I wear shorts all the time, but it's a 62-degree difference. Anyway, I think we know what it's like. We know that when we hit July, it's going to be, still 60 or something as well. So, I mean, I get it. I understand how it works. But one other thing I want to say before we get to our guest tonight, and I warned him that I'm going to be going through all this stuff and he's just going to stare. If you're watching us on Facebook, he's just going to be staring at us, not knowing really what to do. I told you. I wanted to say that you can always catch Ghost Box Radio on my Facebook page as well, Ghost Box Radio with Greg Bakken. You can watch us, but I just been added to a new network starting Monday as well called Get Haunted, and that is another Facebook network, and that's full of paranormal broadcast as well. If you are in a paranormal mood, go to Get Haunted on Facebook. I'm going to start putting my show on there starting March 4th, but you can still get it on Ghost Box Radio with Greg Bakken Facebook page, as well, of course, broadcasting it out to everybody in Minnesota. Very, very cool. I'm excited to talk to our guest tonight. One of the things that I don't seem to be able to do very often, and this is why I'm so excited about it, is to be able to get this local touch on this program. So many of the people we bring in are in different parts of the country. It is so great to be able to talk to people who are local and people who are creative at the same time. And this is something I absolutely love. And I gotta ask. I'm gonna butcher a couple things here. But Zachariah Jones is a longtime lover of books, lover of mysteries, and lover of everything that has to do with the world unseen by most. He lives in Stillwater, a small historic town in eastern Minnesota, with his husband and dog. And his debut novel, Chasing Shadows, Genesis, received an IPPY Award for Best Region Fiction, Midwest, and was a finalist for Best Horror Novel at the NIEA. Visit him online at thezachariahjones.com, and that's spelled ZACHARIA Jones.com, or on Instagram, you can go to at _Zachariah_Jones and go and see his stuff. And Zachariah, welcome to Ghost Box Radio.
Thank you, Greg. Super excited to be on here.
Thank you very much. Now, the question I was going to ask, we had so much time for me to talk to you about this, and I totally forgot about it. Because first of all, I'm lucky I can read it all. But secondly, any awards that are associated with it. Did I say that right? The IPPY Award?
Yep. The
okay.
IPPY, so independent publishers, they do huge awards every year.
And then the other one, I just said NIEA. Is that good, or is it NIA?
Yep.
Okay.
Nope. Yeah. So NIEA is National Indie Excellence in Publishing.
That is fantastic, and congratulations on both of those. I mean,
thank you.
Wow, how cool is that? Now there are two books that you have done so far, and this is Chasing Shadows, and it's going to be a trilogy, right?
Correct. Yeah, it is a trilogy with the third book coming out later this year.
So okay, so the first one is Genesis, the second one is Convocation. Yep. And do you have a name for the third one yet, or is that a spoiler, or what?
Well, I do. Yes, I'm actually going to be working on the cover. I just got the cover finally from the artist, and so I'm going to be doing a reveal for that over the next couple of weeks. I started teasing it a little bit already, but I did release any of the book talks that I've done so far. I did let the title is known as Requiem is the third book. Yep. But yeah, the cover and title and release date and all that's going to be coming out here probably within 2 to 3 weeks is when that'll be published.
That's fantastic. So, okay. So let's start with Genesis here. And let's talk a little bit about what this book is about, please. As you take the sip. Sorry, I just...
Oh, you're good. Yeah, so Genesis is obviously the beginning of the story. The Chasing Shadows trilogy focuses around Jarek Vedini. He is a young man from New York in his late 20s. It's 1924, so the World War I is fairly still in the back of everybody's minds. He got back just a few years prior, and he's in New York City. During the war, he found out that he had some extra gifts, you could call it, but he doesn't quite know what it is. But he grew up in a household where his grandma was very in tune with the supernatural and the world beyond, and so she kind of helped guide him throughout his upbringing, but he hadn't really recognized that until later on in life that that's what she was doing. And so anyway, what he did in New York was kind of turn his skills into being an asset for helping people particularly just to help kind of solve little mini mysteries. So none of that's really shown in the book. It just kind of mentions all that. But what really triggers it is the opening of the book is him coming to St. Paul, because he was requested to come to St. Paul. He doesn't know by who. And a couple anonymous letters requesting him to come because they heard about his gifts. And Sarah O'Connell, she's a socialite from St. Paul back in the 20s, married to Martin O'Connell. They own a print factory. And the wife was murdered. Sarah was murdered. And back in August, and nobody was able to figure out what happened. There's just no clues to the case. And so the local authorities gave up on it. And so Jarek, when he gets here, he quickly finds out that he was brought there because of his gifts, particularly because there is the world beyond has a huge part to play in her actual death. And so kind of goes around that. It's very much of the haunted house style for a horror book, but it is set in St. Paul. So if you are familiar with the St. Paul area, having it in 1924 was awesome, because St. Paul in 1924 was really booming at the start of that Roaring 20s. And just the historical aspect in St. Paul is so fun and was so cool to research throughout this process, to be able to tie it into for people if they're familiar with the area. But anyway, I digress.
No, not at all, actually, because that's exactly what I kind of wanted to talk about. Because, you know, St. Paul itself, even modern day St. Paul lends itself to that sort of noir sort of feel to it. I mean, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but there's parts of St. Paul that really has not moved on from a certain period of time, which is much to its benefit. And I think that's what makes St. Paul such a wonderful place. And I'm thinking, when you were explaining all that to me, I was just thinking, my God, you know, how cool is it as a writer to be like, you know, first of all, you kind of sit down and, like, even though St. Paul exists already, it's not fictional. You're like, I can create this world and I can do whatever I want with it.
Yeah, it was awesome. So when I was kind of getting the plan, I knew I wanted the first book to take place in St. Paul really bad, because like what you said, it has that really good vibe for that mystery.
Yeah.
And being a horror mystery, obviously I wanted to just build that vibe in the background as much as possible. And having that set in the 1920s for two different reasons. One being that's when Prohibition was in play. And I really wanted to tie in an aspect of he's there to help this really filthy rich family, and how back then, if you had money, it's no different than nowadays. You could get by with doing certain things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you could get away with a lot more. And then also in St. Paul, the height of spiritualism was so high in the 1920s. And so since that was a key component of the story, it just fit too well. And so worked with digging in with the Historical Society quite a bit to kind of help build that world around it of what I wanted. But I did obviously take some liberties to change a few things. Like, for example, there'll be, you know, big landmark things, like the first chapter takes place at Union Depot. And then he'll within chapter 2, he's going by the St. Paul Cathedral, which was built by 1924. And then mentions the Capitol, like all these things that were built at the time. But then, like, the actual house that I modeled the whole story on for the O'Connell Mansion is the house that they had torn down on St. Clair Street to build the St. Paul Cathedral. Oh. And so, yeah, so just kind of being able to take some of those components to help build the world, but yet it is still fantasy or fiction.
Sure. And when you had mentioned about the mansions, that was going to be my next question. And you kind of answered for me, is that if we're talking at the hill in St. Paul, where all the mansions kind of line the street, which is right by the cathedral. And my history on St. Paul isn't that great. So I didn't realize that there is a mansion that was there that they tore down, which it makes sense. I mean, this cathedral, for those who are not in Minnesota, is really one of the high architectural points of, in some ways literally, but of the Twin Cities. And it is stunning on every level, and you cannot help but notice that it looks down over downtown St. Paul in a way that is absolutely wonderful, and that is fantastic. You know, I guess, you know, the thing I wanted to ask when you're talking about all this is, you know, kind of the chicken and the egg. What came first? Were you looking at the characters and decided St. Paul fit, or was it like just kind of thinking about St. Paul and kind of building layers upon what is there and thinking this is a great place to set my story?
Yeah, so I really, one of the kind of subtle things in the story is that there's a lot of different people in the both books so far. I'm going to be in the third, that they just feel different and they don't quite belong. And so one thing that I wanted was to have the story set in St. Paul. That I knew was going to be pretty central for the first book. But then the protagonist, Jarek, I wanted him to be an outsider coming in. I mean, he already feels different because of his gifts that he doesn't quite understand, but and just who he is as a person. But then to have him as a complete outsider coming in, because that also helps fill some of the story of, you know, people are second guessing him, they question him, they don't really understand him. Oh, and now he's a New Yorker that's coming to St. Paul. Like, it just kind of helps feed that and builds him up, and then gives him more credibility too throughout the book, and then going into the second book.
Absolutely. No, it's really pretty incredible. I see that some folks in the chat, they're just like wondering, you know, they came in a little bit later, wondering what we're talking about. And we have author Zachariah Jones, and we're talking about his books. We have two books we're talking about here that are actually part of a trilogy. The third one is coming out here soon. They're called Chasing Shadows. The first one is Genesis, and the second one is Convocation. And, you know, I think what I'd like to do right now, as we kind of have a point of a bit of a lull, I think what I'd like to do is I would like to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about these books. We're going to talk about the settings. Zachariah, I also want to talk about Stillwater as well. You're listening to Ghost Box Radio on AM 950.
Metamorphosisconnections.com is an online directory of the best holistic and metaphysical practitioners to help you make your most informed choices. You can search Metamorphosisconnections.com for classes, events, wellness and life coaches, plus metaphysical products and shops. You can also search for a wide array of healers from all modalities, including EFT, sound healing, energy healing, light therapy, ancestral healing, shamanic healing, reflexology, past life regressions, hypnotherapy, yoga, and more. And if you're not sure where to start, the search feature on metamorphosisconnections.com is tailored to help both those who know what they are looking for and those who are just starting. Come explore the possibilities for your higher self by visiting metamorphosisconnections.com. Their experienced practitioners can guide both beginners and those that are already on their spiritual journey. That's metamorphosisconnection.com, your link to direct you on your spiritual transformation.
Twin Cities Pagan Pride is thrilled to host Pagonicon 2024, March 15th through the 17th at the Crown Plaza, Minneapolis West Hotel. Come to Pagonicon to experience deep community where people gather to learn, socialize, and get inspired. This year at Pagonicon, you'll be able to see such notable guests as New Orleans writer and spirit woman Moia Humani, Beverly Smith, also known as Dr. Beverly, Cree storyteller and medicine woman Daffy Puyak, and Chief Arvel Looking Horse. Friday night, join us for a concert with music storyteller Michael Charette, also known as Laughing Fox. Special music guest Wendy Rule, plus an Equinox Ball Saturday night with music from Spiral Rhythm. Pagonicon is March 15th through the 17th at the Crown Plaza Minneapolis West Hotel. You can find more details and register today at tcpaganpride.org. Click on Pagonicon. That's tcpaganpride.org, Pagonicon 2024, March 15th through the 17th.
In the heart of the Northeast, there lies a hidden beast, a dragon's lair at the crossroad, guarded by the maiden Mother Crone. A treasure trove of spells galore, discover incense, books, jewelry, and more. Just as the oracles foretold, this is where your mystery unfolds. As the shadows creep and the veil gets thin, do not fear what lies within. Magus Books is where your journey begins. Visit us at 1848 Central Avenue Northeast in Minneapolis, or online at magusbooks.com.
And speaking of Magus Books, they have a lot of stuff going on, and I wanted to share some of that with you. Coming up this Sunday, March 3rd, Magus Books on March 3rd is doing Gateway to the Gods, a monthly Ethogean experience beginning at noon. This monthly tea party offers a sample mug of entheogenic herb such as blue lotus, a lecture on its historical uses, and a guided meditation to help you connect with its effect. Visit magusbooks.com to register. You'll also see that they have other stuff coming up in the following weekends as well. Check out what's going on over there. Go to magusbooks.com. It's really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of the stuff that they are offering. We are talking with author Zachariah Jones. We're talking about his book, Chasing Shadows. And we had in the comments, we had somebody ask about, they're excited to read your book, they said. But the one thing as I wanted to do is I wanted you to tell us where they can get the book in case people are wanting to go ahead and have a read for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're available online from any major retailer. You can order them through. A lot of people obviously get them through Amazon, but you can get them anywhere. If you're in Stillwater and you are visiting Stillwater, it is available at our local bookstores here in Stillwater. And then also, if you happen to be out by San Diego, they're available at Verbatim Books out there and Mysterious Galaxy. And then also right through my website as well. If you want to get a signed copy, you can get them through my website. They just take a little longer for processing, but you can get them through there.
And I do also want to mention to folks too, if you were thinking of going the Amazon route, I might ask if you'd consider going to ghostboxradio.com. I have a tab called Ghostbox Book Club, and on there, the book is there. There's an Amazon link there, but if you get it through my site, then we get a little money back, meaning me. And but you know, I think the signed copy is the way I would go. To be perfect.
It is also on Audible as well. So Audible does have book one. And book 2 is getting in production right now, and will be on Audible within probably about 5 to 6 weeks.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty neat. That's the big league when you're doing stuff like that.
It's pretty fun. And I got Brian Safara as the narrator. He narrates a ton of sci-fi books. Does a phenomenal job. So he's been fantastic to work with on the product.
So how has reaction been to the book so far?
Excellent. First one was kind of a little bit slow going, and then after, probably once I actually got the first of the IPPY award, that kind of triggered it to get a little bit more well received. Sales have been really well with that, and book 2 has been even better, and which I personally think book 2 is even a better book. So sure. I love book 2. But it does so well when I go to either just different events for book signings or what have you. And then, for example, I also do a couple different book talks. So like I went out to the Spicer Library, did a book talk out there, and had a very, very good crowd. And it was not the crowd I expected. It was a lot of retirees, which I didn't expect for a paranormal horror mystery. But it was excellent. And it just kind of showed me that I shouldn't judge so much, because there's people of all kinds that love this type of stuff, especially when it comes to paranormal.
It seems like that it is kind of an ageless sort of topic, isn't it? The paranormal stuff. I've been noticing that myself. Now, doing a trilogy here, how far out did you map it out before starting on the first book?
So I started book 1 during COVID 2020.
Sure.
Had quite a bit more time on my hands, obviously at home. Wanted to pick up a hobby, had a lot of evenings free. And I've always loved writing. I've written and dabbled and stuff. My first job was when I was 14 at a library. My mom's been a librarian almost my whole life. So I love books and I love writing. But this time I actually sat down, and what I did was I started mapping out book 1 in my head, and it was only going to be one book. And I quickly realized that Jarek's story needed to be more. And so I was like, okay, it's going to be a trilogy. So what I actually did was wrote the first probably about a quarter of book 1. And then what I did is I went and wrote the conclusion to the trilogy. So I finished book 3 for the most part in a draft form. So I knew what my end goal was.
Sure.
And then I went back and did the rest of the outline for book 1. And then as I wrote that simultaneously at different times, what I would do is then jump to my outline for book 2 and start building some of that. And then concurrently, when I was writing book 2, I was jumping to book 3, and just to make sure, especially for when it comes to any plot points and stuff like that, that it would be carried through and brought all the way through to an actual conclusion for people. Because there's nothing more frustrating when there's something in a book that an author writes and it's like there was no point to it. There was no point for that whole section.
Right. or it gets forgotten, you know. I mean, and I find that very much in, if you know, like even modern television in particular, that they'll allude to something, and you know, as the funny thing is, like fandom of anything, they're going to call them out on it. And you know, I think the lame response to that sort of thing is like, why didn't you cover up this? Why didn't you you know, talk about this? And the response is always like, oh, you just wait and see. You know, no, you forgot about it, and you're trying to cover it up. And I think people would very much appreciate that sort of you know, that kind of care that goes into it. But I mean, that's also something that I mean, you'd be doing your characters a disservice if you didn't.
Correct. It only builds them up better. And there are times in the component, because how the books are written is there's a standalone mystery, like the death of Sarah O'Connell is really focused on book 1.
Mm-hmm.
Book 2 then actually takes Jarek out to Deadwood. So at the conclusion of book 1 is where he finds out where he needs to go next in his journey. And it takes him out to Deadwood. And that is because there's he's brought out there for a reason that's tied in. I don't want to give away too much. He thinks he's just out there to find a person. When he gets out there, he finds out there's actually 49 missing women. And that's what he's truly there to help with. So there's little components that I threw in book 1 that people aren't going to quite figure out what they truly are until book 3. But there is a reason for it, because I wanted to leave little breadcrumbs, because I love when people can have an aha moment.
Yeah.
And I had that in book 2. I had some people be like, oh my gosh, now I figure out why you put that in book 1. So that was really fun to see. But it's also kind of comical, because I do get messages at time from readers and they're like, what is this doing? What is this? I know there's a story to this, because almost every character, even some of the people you maybe meet for only a partial chapter, there's a reason for it. And so it's been really fun, because they're like, what was that reason? And it's like, well, I can't tell you.
You just wait.
Have to wait and see.
I love that. I love the fact that you can that you have it plotted out that way. And then of course you're hitting all the sweet spots. You're going up to Deadwood as well.
Mm-hmm.
My gosh, you know, I mean, presumably then you've been to Deadwood yourself.
Oh yes, many times.
Yeah. There's something very special about that place as well.
Very special. And the different areas are places that I am very familiar with, that I personally have felt very strong connection to with the paranormal. So that's why 1, St. Paul, 2, Deadwood, and then book 3 takes us down to Savannah for that deep south.
Ooh, look at you. You're hitting every place. You know,
yes.
You're gonna have to do one on the Queen Mary eventually.
Yeah. I have family down in Savannah, and I've been down there quite a few times. And yeah, that place is just so rich for activity, and it's so fun. Plus, who doesn't love a good gothic horror vibe set in the 1920s?
Absolutely. So I want to switch gears here a little bit, because you kind of alluded to you getting kind of the feels for paranormal activity. Emily, as you know, she says, Zach, as always, thank you for your service. Absolutely. Do you have any paranormal stories, experiences relating to your time in the military?
Ooh, military, probably not so much. Because anywhere that I go for the military is nothing. It's really not anywhere that exciting, to be frank. I would honestly say I started out in the military, I was enlisted. And then what I ended up doing was I went through to an ROTC scholarship so I could go officer.
Mm-hmm.
So I could say during my time for ROTC, chose to do it at St. John's University here in Minnesota. There, I can tell you some good stories of paranormal activity. So I lived in Gregg House, which is one of the oldest buildings on the campus when the monastery was first built. And how the rooms are built, or the house is built, is there's only 4 rooms per floor. And then there's 2 people per room. And then it's a communal bathroom on each floor.
Mm-hmm.
And so my room, ever since moving in, I kind of felt was a little bit off. Like there was just something always there. There's always somebody there. And my roommate that year, he was hardly ever there. He was dating somebody that lived in St. Cloud, and he often stayed at their place. And there's many times where I would come into the room and there'd be something, just moved around in the room. And in my head, I'm like, oh, he came back quick, grabbed some stuff, what have you. And then I started having some really weird things happen. I came home from class, and one of the screens that has those huge tall windows, because it's a very old building.
Sure.
And the screen was off of the window, laying on my floor in the middle of the room. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, did it blow out? But no, because all my stuff that I had on the windowsill, I had several books, a candle, and a little figurine, were stacked up on the screen, on top of the screen. So it was the screen and then the object stacked up on there. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, something crazy is going on here. So it wasn't even a couple weeks later. I'm sitting in, I had one of the lofted beds. So I'm underneath, I'm working on the computer, and it was fairly windy outside. But I was in a corner room. So I had windows on two sides. And all of a sudden the shades for one of them like went up and then came back down, and it flew back up. And I'm like, okay. And then the window flew open. And I was like, so it's one of those like crank out style. And so I'm like, the wind is really bad. And then maybe 2 seconds later, the window on the other corner did the exact same thing, where there's no way the wind from outside would have been able to pull it. And then when I went and I closed all that, I went over to the sink, because there's a sink in the H bedroom too. Sure. And there was a figure, like a dark cloaked figure behind me. And I just turned around, gone, nothing there. After that, I never had any experience. That was probably a couple months before ending that school year. It was in second semester when that happened. But that was a really crazy one. And then also Simon Hall there is where a lot of the political science classes were. I went as a political science major. And that building, if you sat there at night, were in any of the study areas, you could always hear something walking on the one floor. And that door was always locked. It was very, very fascinating place. But that whole property is really cool, because there are parts of the monastery that are completely, obviously not allowed for students, because it is for the, the monks only, or the brothers only. But then there are parts that some of the brothers will even tell you why they're off limits to students. I know there's one room for sure in the main hall, and that was where an exorcism was conducted. And that room, you can see where it is, the doorway is bricked up now, and that one room is completely off limits. It's just really fascinating campus, really cool stories there.
Not to get off track here a little bit, but I don't know if you ever read anything by Stephen LaChance. He's a paranormal author as well. And you make me think about talking about that room. It's interesting. I've heard before a number of times rooms where there's exorcisms and stuff, they're blocked off. And the boy where The Exorcist film was and novel was based on, it was obviously this boy in St. Louis, and from the room where the exorcism took place, they took all the furniture and they put it into one of the hospitals that he was staying at. It's down in the basement, and it's locked up. All the stuff is locked up. But Stephen himself went out there, and he had a chance to not to go in the room, but to be able to be at the door and stuff downstairs. There's a couple big cracks in the cement floor emanating from the room, but also you could constantly hear stuff moving around in that room. That, and that's the thing that I think people don't quite understand about anything demonic, anything to do with exorcism, that's an unwieldy energy that is not going to stop. It just because maybe, and I never think actually it fully leaves a person anyway, but even if it did, that is still absorbed by anything else around it as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to get off topic, but I find it interesting.
Yeah.
Now,
really not that far off topic, because when you start reading The Chasing Shadows, you'll realize within the middle of book one, it really, really starts going into the occult, and that goes into the bigger story going on behind all three books. So
I think that's such a strong point and such a strong place to put into a novel like that, because none of us want to be face to face with a demon or that sort of stuff, but my gosh, we are kind of obsessed with that, aren't we? At the same time, we want to kind of see the what if. How does it affect other people, not us? you know, just
Yep.
like, but, and not even real people, just like characters and stuff, and see what happens. I think that's really cool that you kind of encompassing all of that. And I mean, you're just kind of taking everything that you are really interested in, and you're putting it in this trilogy.
Yep, exactly. It's my interest. It's like I said, I loved doing the research on it because one, the historical side was so fun. Two, a lot of the paranormal stuff with the ghosts and the story was, you know, kind of a conglomerate of things of, you know, inspired by things that I've seen, things like that, or other stories I've heard. And then moving into the occult aspect, because it starts going into a lot of stuff when it comes to King Solomon, and that's really what this boils down to in the occult realm. And so I got the Keys of Solomon and really actually read all of those books and got some of the backstory on that and how he allegedly wielded demons and stuff like that. Is super fascinating. Like, I went down tons of rabbit holes that I had no need to for the story, but it was just really fun to do.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Now, Emily also asked, and I'm going to kind of change her question. You know, you said at the monster or where you went to school, there was a cloaked figure that was behind you, or
yes,
right? Do you think, was that a monk? Do you think?
I believe it was a monk in a habit is what I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they're a Benedictine society, so all their habits there are the black ones, and then you have the black hoods that can go pull up, kind of very Harry Potter style.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's what most of the brothers wear there.
Well, I hear that they're a hard habit to break. So.
But
and that's how radio goes wrong. But you know, the thing too is about that is that I mean, when you run into stuff like that, do you feel their energy yourself? I mean, I just
yes.
can't hear. Yeah, because you kind of alluded to that a little.
Yeah, bit. It really started, and I have a lot of family members too that very much dive into this because they sense a lot of different things. And the house I grew up in as a child out in Wilmer was, I mean, that house, I will swear up and day, and so will my entire family, that house was incredibly haunted and had a lot of issues with it. And it carried on with a lot of issues, unfortunately, for several families that actually lived in there after us too, where some not good things happened. It was just very, very sad. But a lot of activity.
I totally believe it. Why don't we go ahead and do this? Let's take our second break. When we come back, we're going to finish up talking with Zachariah about his books. I still want to talk about Stillwater. Yeah. If you have any questions, please put it into the comments. We have a lot more left to do. You're listening to Ghost Box Radio on AM 950.
And you need to be listed on metamorphosisconnections.com. It's a network where you can grow with like-minded practitioners and reach new clients. Metamorphosisconnections.com is an online directory you need to list yourself and your business. Our platform makes it easy for you to create listings of your products and services, and you can also choose to list your classes, events, and so much more. Metamorphosisconnections.com helps you create weekly and monthly promotional ads targeted towards your potential clients and promotes them for you via social media and newsletter. There are clients searching for your specialty right now. Let us help them find you. Start your listing today so you can share your own unique gifts and talents by finding the level of membership that best fits your needs. Let us help you reach your clients that are searching for what you do. Visit metamorphosisconnections.com and sign up today.
Twin Cities Pagan Pride is thrilled to host Pagonicon 2024, March 15th through the 17th at the Crown Plaza Minneapolis West Hotel. Come to Pagonicon to experience deep community where people gather to learn, socialize, and get inspired. Check out all the featured guests and list of activity at tcpaganpride.org. Pagonicon is a pagan conference offering workshops, panels, discussions, social space, music, a ball, vendors, and much more. Pagonicon is an educational and social venue for pagans, Wiccans, heathens, druids, people of other folk, craft, indigenous, and magical traditions. Come to Paganagon to experience deep community where people gather to learn, socialize, and get inspired. Paganagon is a safe place, not only to be yourself, but to meet other like-minded individuals. You can find more details and register today at tcpaganpride.org. Click on Paganagon. That's tcpaganpride.org. Paganagon 2024, March 15th through the 17th.
Feeling like people just don't get the vibrant rainbow unicorn that is your celestial essence? Have you been wondering how you stepped into this infernal, mundane timeline full of muggles, NPCs, and toilet paper shortages? Here at Magus Books and Herbs, we get you, and are staffed with real-life unicorns just waiting to help you rediscover your shine. So come explore your magical side with books, herbs, incense classes, and more at 1848 Central.
And join me tomorrow on Ghostbox Radio with Greg Bakken. We're going to do a replay tomorrow with Daryl Marston from the A&E Ghost Hunters series. We're going to be talking about his book, which when we did it originally back in October, it was a newer book. It was called The Horrors of the House of Wills. Definitely, it was a great conversation. And really, I read it. It's a great book. Check it out. And the reason why, once I said last week, the reason why I do replays on Thursday is at 9 o'clock. You can watch it on Ghostbox Radio with Greg Bakken on Facebook. I do a program. It's called Myth or Mystery, and I do it with a few other people, and we look at clips and we decide whether, like, there's these clips are looking like they're supposedly paranormal. Are they paranormal? Do we think they're paranormal? Are they not paranormal? Are they UFO? All this stuff. It's a fun show. Also, there's listener and watcher participation. You can vote on it as well. That's tomorrow at 9 p.m. And then afterwards is our episode with Daryl on Ghostbox Radio. I am having a great conversation with Zachariah about his book, and it's been really good. The book is called Chasing Shadows. There's two of them so far, Genesis and Convocation. And you can get them at his website. You can go over to thezachariahjones.com. You can get a signed version there. If you go through Amazon, please consider going through ghostboxradio.com and going to Ghostbox Book Club. You can go there, get it through the Amazon affiliate link, get a little, 10 cents back, but every little bit helps, and I really appreciate it. Now, Zachariah, I saw during the break, the door behind you open up and there's a head that popped in there. Was that your husband? Does he want to come in and say hi to us?
Yeah, he just got back.
He's like,
work.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah. No, he just got back from work. He works in Maplewood and works until 10 o'clock. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. So no, he just got back. So he went downstairs to grab a little nightcap and watch some TV with the dog. Well, he's probably actually listening on his phone, would be my guess. But
nightcap. Now that's something I can get behind right now.
Yes.
That's for sure. And what's your dog's name, if you don't mind?
Delta.
Delta. Very cool.
Mutt, but a phenomenal dog.
Oh my
phenomenal
goodness.
Dog.
That is fantastic. And so you're living out in Stillwater. How long have you been out in Stillwater?
I moved here January of 2019.
A little while, yeah. With the paranormal feelings that you got there, what are you thinking out there?
So Stillwater is, if you have any interest in the paranormal, anything in that realm, any listener to this, I highly recommend a visit to Stillwater. It is a incredibly cool town, very good people, very good history, and a lot of activity. And by that, I mean good restaurants, bars, you name it, great hotels, but also if you like the paranormal, there's a lot of good activity out here. This city is one of the oldest cities in Minnesota. Well, it is the oldest city of Minnesota. It stayed small. It's kept its size. It's only about 20,000 people right now. The downtown historical district, and then the North Hill and South Hill for residential. North Hill, South Hill for residential is, the massive big old houses. They're phenomenal. But you can experience, if you are sensitive to that type of stuff, you will experience something while you're here. It's just astronomical.
Take the trolley or whatever that is that looks at the houses there. That's really a lot of fun. I did we did on the show here back in October of last year for Halloween, we did a live paranormal investigation of the Grand Garage. That was really fun. And we actually got stuff at the Grand Garage, but we also had a link back, obviously, to the station. And so we would be at the Grand Garage asking for activity at the station, and equipment would go off at the station in Eden Prairie. And it was really quite the interesting night. And yes, as far as walking around Stillwater, you can't help but feel there's so many feels, actually, because of the just the psychic energy there, just the energy that's permeated throughout the years, but just the sights and the beauty and everything to do with it is, gosh, it's such a wonderful place.
Yeah. For me personally, going by the Lowell Inn, it's the old Connolly Shoe Factory across the street from there, which is now it's an event center upstairs, and the Velveteen Speakeasy in the basement. Lot of energy down there, particularly an older man. That's very, very cool. And then also on the south end of downtown, it's the Laura Hotel and the Feller Restaurant. But it used to be the old brewery, back 100 years ago, well, more than 100 years ago, prior to Prohibition. And that area too is just phenomenal for some energies. It's really fun, really cool. And most of the energies I've ever experienced there have been really good and positive, or just, conversational type stuff. But then when we were actually looking at houses to move here, there's a house on the South Hill that was in our price range, just absolutely beautiful, big old house. Walked into that house and instantly wanted to vomit. I was hot, sweaty, felt like I couldn't breathe. Josh right away noticed, the realtor right away noticed. It was very, very heavy walking through that house, and then got to the top floor, because it was a 3-story house, and pulled down the ladder for the very upper part, which actually had a widow's watch on it. And instantly it was like, nope, I'm out. I gotta leave this house. So that was the one time where it was very not so great energy, but overall it is phenomenal. Really good interactions. If anybody's sensitive, like I said, highly recommend a visit down there.
Wow. Yeah, no. And what's interesting about that too, about those houses and whatever, because of the type of businesses that were around back then, that where the money came from, like the lumber and stuff like that. It's, it kind of gives a feel of old money, I thought, just big houses and stuff. And I suppose in a way I think there has to be some similarities to a certain extent with Savannah in some extent.
Oh yes, definitely. There's a lot of good similar vibes. And that's what's really beautiful if you look at the architecture here too. So Stillwater has always had a strong pagan background as well, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And so if you look at some of the architecture and how some things are built and designed, you can see certain symbols within the architecture, and it's really cool if you actually kind of just keep your eyes open for it. It's pretty neat. And then down in Savannah, there's also a lot of that, which is really cool.
I think you need to start tours in Stillwater.
No, I don't have time for that. I'll join people for a drink and we'll walk and find a ghost.
Once again, an idea I can get behind. And I think you have the 2 books out. The third one, it's going to be coming out, and you said it, and I apologize.
In October.
In October, that's going to be pretty amazing. Coming out now. Are you working on any other books or anything right now?
Yes, I actually have a couple other ones that I'm working on right now. One is a normal, just literary fiction, and that one is actually it's a fiction book, but it is tied to the military, and it's actually about a soldier just literally going through basic training. And this is during the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, so
sure,
semi autobiography is what it is.
Absolutely.
But it's actually fiction, but it's going to be fiction. And obviously exaggerated and dramatized. But then I am working on a couple other ideas for horror books. One I did start, and that one is a horror book that's focuses around Peeps the Clown. And then I have another one that I really want to write. I have not started it at all, but I do have the concept, and that is really also about the house that I grew up in, Wilmer. I would really like to do something focused around that house, just because there were so many anomalies and dark things with that house.
Is it still standing?
It is. I think they're on probably family number 5 since we moved out 20 years ago.
Wow.
So yeah, and some not great things. Several people are in jail from different families throughout those periods.
It's something that you know, I've heard before with different houses and stuff, that there is, you know, and it's just there's something that stays. There's a funk. There's something that is just, you know, and it feeds on people who live there.
It really does. Not to get too personal, but yeah, it definitely affected our family back in the day. And just so many strange things of, I mean, even like my father would never be somebody that would really believe too much in the paranormal. And even he will admit that house, there's something wrong with it. And I mean, the amount of voices we heard, full on conversations taking place in that house that we could audibly hear collectively. How many family members would be sleepwalking and do really weird things in the night. We had blackbirds fly out of our basement, flying, like they literally flew out of the utility room. I had something in my crawl space attic that was physically moving things around in there and trying to open the door while I was in my bedroom. Like just such crazy stuff that you think is only in the movies, and it's not.
I have to say, because I see my friend John is in the chat right now, and you had just talked about a blackbird that came up out of nowhere. And John, does that sound familiar to you at a place that we investigated in Iowa? There's something, I've seen it, I've heard it. We don't know if it was a blackbird or what it was, but something came out of a wall and we ducked, and then it came back at us and there was nowhere for it to go. And it's unexplainable. And that is really just a very interesting thing. And, you know, that's the thing I love about when we get together, just all of us, and we talk about our paranormal experiences. It's nice to hear stuff that has happened to you, that it might be like some of it is like applicable to stuff that we've done, because sometimes you just don't know. So it's really interesting, isn't it? Any thoughts about like doing just stuff set in Stillwater? Any right? I mean, because
I would like to do that. There's a local author here that she actually writes books, and they're called the Stillwater Witches. And and so I was like, well, I would love to dabble in something, especially with something in that realm. And I'm like, well, I obviously don't want to get too close to her realm, but then I'm thinking like, okay, I would love to do something more particularly like with the logging industry and a lot of things with that, because there is some really good sad stories of people obviously dying in accidents with the logging industry. And then with the St. Croix River here, you hear tons of stories of people or different apparitions down by the river and stuff like that. So there's a lot of good things that I could pull from. The Stillwater Caves, where the brewery is, all the caves that are underneath the South Hill. There's some great stories that you can pull from there to help inspire.
Now we have about 3 minutes left. And did you do any formal training for writing, or is this all just like, you know what, I have this great imagination? And I know, and the reason I ask is also because just, you know, you talk about the planning of the trilogy, and it's a very smart way of going about it, I think. And I'm just kind of curious what you had, what kind of background you had with that.
No real formal training. Like I said, I started reading books at a very young age. First job was at a library, grew up around that. Books were very important for my mom and for us to be very well read. And by well read, reading a lot of fiction. I mean, obviously a lot of well-read people read a lot of nonfiction, but reading fiction, I think, is so important, especially to make your brain stronger, because having a good imagination really helps keep that brain going in the future. And so I just used that for my fuel for it, and wrote how I felt comfortable, because I've read so many books that I was not happy with. And so I wrote what I would be happy with. So for example, when I'm describing something, I give detail to give that visual, but there's so many books that you read where it just goes on and on of the detail, and it just gives so much, where it just pulls so much away from the story. So I wanted quick reads to give the good visual, to give the good spook to somebody and move on. So they're like these books, they're a little over 200 pages each. You can read them pretty quick. The audiobooks are only a little over 6 hours each. So.
Oh, my friend John, he met you at the Anderson House. Were you there in January?
Oh, yes, I was. Hi,
All
John.
All right. Because I remember before we started, Zach was talking about some drunk at the Anderson House that he didn't really care for, and I. Oh, okay. Well, sorry, that should have been off air. But no, that's pretty cool. I was supposed to be there that weekend. I had another thing I needed to go to, so that's very cool. Very cool, actually. That's I think that's why your name sounded familiar when Emily had mentioned you to me. It takes a while, but I do catch on eventually. So once again, the books are called Chasing Shadows Genesis, Chasing Shadows Convocation. These are wonderful local books, and that you can get them through the ZachariahJones.com website, and that's where you get the signed copy if you so desire. And also you can go through Amazon and other places as well. When we get to the point of the third book coming out, do you want to come back on? You want to talk about it a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to talk about my times in Savannah as well, because there's some good stuff there too.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to wait for the book to come out to get to talk about that. I think that's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that quite a bit, actually, and hearing what you have to say about that. So Zachariah Jones, thank you so very much for joining us tonight. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. I really appreciate it. This was fun.
Oh, good. I'm happy to hear that. Tomorrow, folks, don't forget, we're going to be replaying our episode with Daryl Marston talking about his book. But also at 9 o'clock, we're doing Myth or Mystery on my Facebook page, Ghostbox Radio with Greg Bakken. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow. Everyone, have a good night.